business. We will lay out a plan of how do we unbundle certain SOEs. In next week, we will look at ultimately the budget that in South Africa. And the South African government will put before the people of South Africa 2 crucial line items. How do we absorb Eskom's debt and how do we bail out SAA? Now on both those items, the Democratic Alliance has been at the forefront of saying it should have been done 10 years ago that we unbundle at Eskom. Our view was always that we split it into 2 companies, one for generation, the other for build. The second was always that municipalities must be entitled to purchase power directly from independent power producers, particularly municipalities that have got capability. To this effect, we've demonstrated that where we are in government, we've already implemented some of this policy. It's for that reason why the City of Cape Town is taking the Minister of Energy to court so that we can proceed at purchasing power. Already, the province of the Western Cape is procuring new energy resources to ensure that whilst the country today goes into stage 2 load shedding, the Western Cape can remain in stage 1. Herman Mashaba has already completed a handover program of a new power station which has already come in at 50 million rands below budget and on time. This is a DA government that show the fact that we want an economy that is capacitated with energy, and therefore federal executive noted the fact that when we talk about how do we make sure an economy that's energy secure, we are in fact taking plans on the table. But that would focus on the economy. The second component of our manifesto speaks about the notion of how do we ensure that our citizens are safe. It became very clear that President Ramaphosa did not speak about crime in his State of the Nation address. This is one of the key reasons why there is a lack of investment in cities or a lack of investment in South Africa. Because financial investment, it's human capital. How do we ensure that citizens are safe? We will share our offer on how we build an honest and a professional police service. Further on, we will speak at length about how do we secure our borders. South African borders are porous, and we believe that all citizens and non-citizens must be properly registered. We have to, ladies and gentlemen, as we consider even the State of the Nation address, ask ourselves this question: how is it that the business people are getting arrested, but in fact, the politicians aren't? If you are serious about acting against corruption, you need to arrest the politicians. We've looked at this directorate that the president has now called, and many of you have called it the return of the scorpions. It is not. It cannot be that a directorate located in the NPA will have the efficacy. We need an independent directorate that is able to investigate corrupt politicians. So therefore, these are initiatives when we speak about how we deal with corruption. Say, let's arrest the politician and give them a 15-year sentence. But furthermore, ensure that we introduce to municipalities blockchain technology that will ensure that corruption doesn't go forward. Lastly, we talk about the excessive delivery of basic services. Federal Council considered much of the government reports that have been tabled. It noted without doubt the success of the City of Johannesburg, where already an adjustment budget has been tabled of 700 million rands additional to the initial budget that was taken. This is what happens when you fight corruption to the value of 18 billion rands. Therefore, naturally in that, new projects are coming on board. 185 million rands will now be put to road surfacing and reconstruction, 82 million rands into electrification of informal settlements, 25 million rands for 5 mobile clinics that will be coming on board, 18 million rands to extend operating hours of further clinics, 130 million rands for electrifying 2 mega housing projects, 20 million rands for hardware installation and integrated intelligence operations center for JMPD. They will put 20 million rands for upgrading of informal trading stalls, 20 million rands of new street lights, 15 million rands for capacitation and development facilitation, and then an additional 400 million rands investment into a broken ICT system. We've already indicated that 3 new properties have been added to the market for redevelopment in the inner city of Johannesburg. The last along with the manifesto, is that we considered the discussion at length about redress. Now, this is an important issue because redress is a pillar of the DA. You can't build one South Africa for all when citizens who by circumstances of their birth and the history of this country are still left out of the economy. We are unapologetic. Those citizens are black South Africans. That's why when we say race is a proxy for disadvantage, we don't mean that it's a principle where you are trying to take from some in order to benefit others. It's so that you can create a citizenship where all citizens have equity in the economy and ultimately we can address historical injustices. That view was unanimously adopted by Federal Council. It, by its essence, rejects the ANC's model of BBBEE, where BBBEE benefits only a few connected individuals at the expense of the broad South Africans who are in need of inclusion. The manifesto lays itself out about how we build programs that are much more inclusive. Why are we not incentivizing companies to say, if you give bursaries to students who happen to be black, we can give the appropriate point system? The program also acknowledges that when two professionals who stand before an interview panel, one happens to be black, another happens to be white, that in fact we support the principle that say where there's equal competence, a black South African must be chosen. Furthermore, it's a policy that says, how do we look at employees coming into places of work that they can get shareholding, and how do we, lastly, look at the competence of companies so that citizens can be able to engage with them in a redress model that is far more aggressive at including South Africans rather than exclusively looking at the politically connected. The critique towards BBBEE has been well written on. The only thing I will say about this matter is that BBBEE delegitimizes legitimate black businesses. If you are a black business who is not connected in the ANC, you are not going to benefit. It's as simple as that. You are not going to be able to gain entrance into the economy because those ones who are benefiting are the ones that are on the inside track. Therefore, how do you build a South Africa for all when only some who are on the inside are benefiting and those who are on the outside are left out? We want to stimulate micro-enterprise that is legit, that is able to get into the economy. So Federal Council considered that matter. Last 2 points I'll make. Federal Council also adopted a new mayoral handbook, which we will roll out to all our municipalities. In the handbook, it ensures that public representatives are held accountable for the use of public resources. Because you will recall, we've seen excessive abuses that take place in other municipalities, where people buy luxury vehicles, where people travel in luxury. And ultimately, when you attend State of the City address, State of the Province address, you discover very quickly that these are lavish parties. We have directed all our governments to not spend money on parties, to not spend money on luxury vehicles, that travel must be curtailed, and ultimately all public resources must be given to people. That mayoral handbook has been given and has been adopted, and we will hold all our public reps to all of these standards. Many people have been asking questions about the list process of the Democratic Alliance. We considered all 9 lists of the provinces. Those now have been vetted by the federal executive and are now referred back to structures so that ultimately, where there are processes of appeal, people can come and appeal that. We are comfortable as the DA. You know, it's so good, Dr. Mayor, when you consider a list of the DA and you are not asking yourself the question, who is corrupt here, who is not corrupt? Who is listed in Busasa, who is not? Where is there a criminal case against this one and who is not? The main thing is that we look at a competent and a diverse list. And therefore, federal executive exercised itself to ensure that at the end of the process, we will produce a list that is diverse of the best South Africans to serve in governments. Therefore, it became strong for us to look at the Western Cape list, to look at Gauteng's list, to look at the Northern Cape list, to ensure that we can produce South Africans that are capable of leading the charge in government. fellow South Africans, in closing, many people would have spent time listening to President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address, and in fact ended up in a place where they realized that there was a lot of thinking and speaking about where things, summits, initiatives, watching too many spaces. At the end, we want South Africans, they needed immediate action. That's why our manifesto focused itself on an immediate action. That's why we think the most crucial announcement that was made on Thursday night is election date 8th of May. This will be a referendum on whether Sfunabo agrees or we want change, whether we need more jobs or not, and therefore ultimately I'm confident that as South Africans look at the referendum on the ANC, we can build an alternative in this country where we can build a best people government, a government where people who are competent can run the state and ensure. Already, we've been at length about putting together that government. It must be lean and mean. That's why when I tabled last year a 15 ministries document to say we can run government on 15 ministries, we can reduce the bloated state. Already we are doing that, and ultimately I believe this will be a choice between the ANC's track record and the future that we seek towards the people of South Africa. That's why I'm so looking forward to the 8th of May. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks very much, Leader. I see hands already up. We'll take 3 and then make the responses take 3. Let's just do the standard introduction, then take the questions. Paul, you are first.
Hi, Paul Becchiato, Bloomberg. Just on the surveys that have been going out recently, some have come out saying the ANC now with Cyril Ramaphosa looking at about 60% of the vote. Others saying the DA is looking around about 21, 22, 23%, somewhere around there. And then there have been persistent rumors and speculation going on that the DA's own polls are saying that it's showing 14%. Could you please comment on us and give us give us some idea of your internal polls, what they're finding at the moment, and in your registration weekends, can you give us a number on how many voters that you think you've got registered?
Okay,
cool. Yeah.
Young Carter, News 24. You said your goal and the achievable goal is to take the government of Gauteng and the Northern Cape. Do you see that thing by yourselves or coalitions? And if coalitions is working with the EFF still a possibility? And then those are the predictions in the Western Cape. The recent by-elections shown a drop for DA support. We're still winning votes, but there seems to be a general drop in support. Are you concerned about that? Because I mean, massive implications for you, the Western Cape support with their drops. And lastly, about the manifesto, something that I find very strange about South African politics and with discourses, there's no talks about climate change. Do you have a climate change plan in the manifesto?
Cool. Yeah.
Yes, Linda, into business day. So you, if I understood you correctly, you targeting Gauteng, Northern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. You don't mention the Eastern Cape. You know, what's the problem there? And I'm still confused as to what your BEE policy is, because on the one hand you say you reject the triple B, triple E, but on the other hand you say that must be given preference. So what is it actually?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Bulelani, let's just take 4 and then we'll come back. Yeah.
Bulelani, SABC. Did the FedEx discuss this call of a tax revolt, and what is the party's position in regards to that? The second one is whether is Ms. Helen Ziller still suspended from party activities?
Okay. Paul, you know, Ipsos in the 2016 election said that DA in the city of Nelson Mandela Bay would get between 20 and 30%. And we got 48%. Ipsos have written a number of polls. It's the Ipsos poll that has said 14%, and it's been consistently inaccurate. Our internal polling indicates our support is higher than that of 2014 as a start.
Which was? 22.
Yeah. So the myth that the DA is going backwards is all but a myth. Categorically so. And to Jan's point, you can test it on by-elections. When you look at by-elections, by-elections tell you that a by-election occurs within a low turnout model, right? Which, when you are in government, sometimes can favor the opposition. But the perceptible sense is that we've retained support and increasing it on the basis of the 2016 model, which actually the DA increased its support beyond 22%. In fact, it was close to about 26, 27%. So I would argue the case more seriously, that in fact by-elections tell us that we're A, not above the 2014 level, B, support isn't running away from the DA. Where we campaign, actually the DA is growing. And the other thing about by-elections, which are for me very exciting, is that we are winning wards off the ANC, which tells me that the ANC is experiencing decline in support. Paul, you asked me the second question, which is about what do I think of Mr. Ramaphosa and where he's polling. I think 60% is overinflated, way too overinflated. Our internal polls are indicating that Ramaphosa peaked in last year's February. What has Mr. Ramaphosa done in the last year? He's increased VAT. He's lost 25,000 more jobs. Unemployment has risen. And actually, he's returning people on his lists that are in the State Capture Commission. Mr. Zuma is still running the ANC. Because when you look at the list, you'll see who's on those lists. And I think South Africans know this. They know that in the state capture thing, Mr. Ramaphosa not only must account for his own 500,000 gift from Bosasa. We call it a bribe, we think. Bosasa bought themselves a president. Other members of his cabinet, Gwereman Tash, Vincent Smith, Zweli Mkhize, you can see the list is increasing. And if the Sunday Times is to be believed, then Zizikodwa also is on the same WhatsApp group with the other people from Bosasa. There must come a point where we start to say, is the ANC a racketeering organization? That's the question we should ask. Because it seems state capture only talks about them and VBS, and you can carry on. We've been in government, and you've not had a DA public rep being put at state capture, or furthermore, this discussion about where members have been found. Because we deal with people. So I think, to me, when I look at the electoral prospects, I think anyone who's thinking Mr. Ramaphosa is going to sail this election, and I mean, I've read some reports that say they are heading towards a 2/3 majority. I just think it's a planet that we certainly don't subscribe to. We think that South Africa finds itself in a desperate need for change. Jan, you asked me the question about coalitions. Our view and our stance is that, first of all, let's go out and get as many votes as possible so that we can dictate who goes into coalition with us. I don't want to prescribe parties, because even now, we are not in a formal coalition with the EFF. Right now, as we speak, we want to produce a government program that says we want clean government, we want a non-racial South Africa, we want a market-based economy, we want to ensure that we uphold the rule of law, and ultimately, we will maintain the view of a non-racial South Africa. Now, there are many parties who don't mobilize on that basis. You know, sometimes we talk about the EFF as a party that mobilizes on the basis of race. Sometimes we forget that the FF also mobilizes on the basis of race. They say on one end, we're just going to focus on just on white South Africans. That's not for us. For us, when I sit at the Federal Council of the DA, the thing that excites me the most is that actually when I look at the benches, I look at the people, it's a diverse range of South Africans. Black, white, Indian, colored, straight, not straight. South Africans who come from rural, urban. All of those dynamics, they come together to build this one South Africa for all. So it's a principle that we've got to maintain. That's why I stand against those who want to cut off the throat of whiteness as much as I stand against those who say, ons is 'n party vir sulke mense. Same WhatsApp group. So in our view, our coalitions, we've got to dictate the numbers. We are open to coalitions. We will work with people who uphold those principles. And without a shadow of a doubt, we believe that so long as we can set the framework of the agenda, we will work with those South Africans. And as you can see in Johannesburg, we've been able to root out corruption working with these parties. As we've seen in Tshwane, the same. When you look at where it goes wrong, it's in Nelson Mandela Bay, where the coalition of corruption has taken root, and there the people are killing each other. It's happening as we speak. In fact, I've got an extensive report that looks at what is happening in that municipality since the DA left it, and it must concern all of us. That the future of South Africa's coalitions does not change. I believe it. I think South Africa one day, even at a national government, will be managed in a coalition. It's the future of our country. So we better get used to it, and we better practice it and do it well. Fortunately, we've already got a head start on many other parties. And I can assure South Africans, where we go into coalitions, we will never go into coalitions with people who are corrupt, with people who are racist, and with people who are not interested in making sure the citizens themselves can be able to build their own future. We are going to build the best people government, whether in Gauteng, Northern Cape, Western Cape. And by the way, and I'll say this, people say Mr. Ramaphosa will go into coalition with the EFF. Who knows that? We can bump into each other again and discuss the future of South Africa. I'll leave it at that. You asked me the question about climate change. One of the key deterrents to climate change and sustainable development, in fact, I considered a report in this Federal Council that looked at sustainable municipal, not only financing, but how do we build sustainable cities around climate. Because South Africa is coal dependent and does not have initiatives that mitigate against global warming. We are of the view that we must diversify energy. That's why the unbundling of Eskom isn't just only a financial issue, it's a sustainability issue. That's why it's important that we introduce green energy in a much more aggressive manner, incentivize citizens in how they manage waste in a way that ensures that we can build sustainability around the climate, but also for citizens to partner with government in being able to achieve that. So the task, I've put it out to our ADEC colleagues, or Association of Democratic Alliance councillors, to say we must put together a position that goes into this. Because the model at this point in time says, let's consume coal, on-sell it to consumers, and the natural consequence is that we're seeing it. We have to diversify energy. That's why Eskom cannot remain as it is, because if it does, we'll end up with an energy mix that exacerbates climate change rather than mitigate against it. Linda, hey, the Eastern Cape is a fascinating province, you know. I wish you should write more about the collapse of the ANC. Because actually, I think the Eastern Cape is a failed state. It is a failed state. Voters in the Eastern Cape, I was there last weekend, the whole of last weekend. And actually, people are sharing water with animals, dead animals, before we get to an ANC Congress. Those people who protested in that ANC Congress.
Of chairs.
They are?
The Congress of Chairs.
Yes. Are people who are legitimate. Because I've seen to myself, that's why I say it's a failed state. We are targeting it. Ngaba Banga is our premier candidate there. It's expensive to reach votes in the Eastern Cape, because the distances are vast. So you have to get there, you have to go to rural villages, but we are working hard. We are also not, the reason I don't mention it now, the Eastern Cape, is along with the Northwest. Because yes, Supra taking the ANC to court and winning. talk about management. I was always surprised when people look at what the DA's management is like. Yeah, the ANC, they did an illegal thing and Supra is proving them. So even in the Northwest, we have seen growth. We've got to work harder at being able to, in fact, insist that the ANC must drop below 50%. I put KZN on the list as provinces. We are not going to form a government in KZN. But it is imperative that the ANC loses support there. And the growth, the tracts are indicating that's what it is. So I think before, to edge your question to Paul's, let's not assume the knight in shining armor, Ramaphosa, is going to end up just with a simple win. Let's not take that as a given. Be wrong.
But just to clarify, the provinces where you think you will win is Gauteng, Western Cape.
Gauteng, Northern Cape, Western Cape.
Okay.
Now on BEE, the ANC creates a scorecard, right? Called BBBEE, right? Our model is quite simple. It says we must simplify it, focus on the fact that yes, BBBEE is a redress model. The ANC has its model, here's our model. Our model says educate, rather than give shares to Musi Maimanu in your business. Give shares to employees, so it's about give equity to employees, educate people, develop enterprise, and ultimately broaden inclusion, in simple terms. So perhaps, in simpler terms, the ANC emphasized one thing. We are saying in a redress, broadening is the issue. Must be broad-based. The current model of the ANC has been captured by clever people who run businesses and want to keep an inside track on the matter. For us, we want broadening. Why aren't we considering giving pension or increasing pension funds of black South Africans? Because if we don't do that, how do we transfer wealth from one generation to another? So the question can't be that we accept the ANC's model as it is. So we are reorganizing it so that it's much more focused on citizens than politically connected individuals. And just as a point, I don't own any shares to corrupt people, I don't. So I just wanted to say that. Bulelani, the question of the tax revolt did not come up. It was not DA policy. We don't make policy on Twitter. And so, therefore, naturally, it wasn't discussed. Our stance always remains, let's go and win votes on the 8th of May so we can bring a clean government that uses South Africa's money for the benefit of all citizens.
Anyone with more questions? This will be the last round. Filda, let me start with those ones.
Okay, you're watching live visuals of the federal leadership of the Democratic Alliance briefing the media on the outcomes of the party's federal council this weekend. And the agenda will comprised of several matters concerning the party as well as the country. Mr. Musi Maimane touching on Eskom's unbundling. He spoke about crime. He spoke about how to secure our borders, saying that South African borders are porous. In terms of corruption and arrests, he's asking the question why business people are getting arrested and not politicians. And he also touched on the Federal Council having adopted a new mayoral handbook. Okay, as you can see in your screens, the bigger block. Let's cross now